No, this is just like
lotions and
product, like stuff you use.
Well, Liz and I both know, it takes a lot of hard work to look this good, doesn't it, Liz?
And let me tell you, you guys look 14 product fabulous. I like those shampoo and conditioner in one bottle things.
Well,
you'd be horrified by that, I'm sure.
When I had hair,
so you'd be horrified.
I have to use things that do some volumizing now because there isn't much. Whenever I travel with musician friends and stuff, they always crack up over what I've got. I try to keep it all in I cannot get it all in that zip up.
You can't do the quart-size bag for the airlines?
What are the shaving kit bag?
The TSA should make separate rules for people like you. You shouldn't have to use just a quart-size bag.
And of course, you go on a trip now and it's like, I can only take 4 ounces. Those little containers.
Only if it's an overnight trip. All right, on the Gang of Four today, now that we've completely gone off the rails here, we have, of course, that's Ken Slavin over there with his products. And a house for sale on West Kings Highway.
Yep.
Boy, if you're looking to buy a house,
it's a great deal and it's in a wonderful neighborhood, and it just has to be done. But yeah,
if we got
Joe Barfield is my real estate agent.
So we couldn't. If somebody called in right now and made you an offer, we couldn't work that
Sure,
out, right?
Call me.
Okay. I don't think we've ever sold a house on this show. We could do that.
Sure.
It's probably against every law there is.
Probably not. I think a sale is a sale.
Dr. Masarat Ali is here, mercifully not selling anything. And Elaine Wolff, the editor and one of the founders of Plaza, TheArmasTX.com, and you are selling subscriptions.
AKA the socialist lady, who nonetheless is selling subscriptions.
She knows she has to build her business.
We asked our listeners.
Well, I'm selling, maybe not something that will be of general interest. My company has created new test kits that will help the
medical technology
users of Gardasil, for example.
Oh, well, we might need that very soon if we have a president who's... Anyway. Rick Perry. Let's talk about Rick Perry. We asked our listeners this morning, and it's the question on the JR poll. Kind of the bottom line deal with this candidacy is that he is the small government governor. That's what he's saying in so many words. Is that true? Has he been a small government governor?
No, it is not. I mean, he has a 11 years track record that people can see. He's not something like me that I don't have a track record and I can fool people with hope.
Well, all we could do is you as a candidate is take your word. So what is his record then?
So you can see what has happened to the government size in his term, 10, 11 years that he has been there. It has more than doubled.
Okay. Spending has increased. The
size of government the size of government has...
He is best known for things like Gardasil and TTC and that deal where you had to take marriage classes to not pay your marriage license fee. And so people are saying he actually seems like a guy that has a lot of ideas for using or extending government, not a guy that has a lot of ideas for retracting government.
Right, another great example, is that the Farmers Bureau, I forget the exact name of the organization, they originally endorsed K. Billy Hutchison last time around, because they were so mad at his veto of what was a very progressive eminent domain reform bill in terms of the small guy, the little guy. So that again is an example, that's one of the most awesome powers, and I mean awesome in a kind of can be terrifying way that a government can exercise as eminent domain, and they do some good things with it, but they were very upset about his unwillingness to support them in that. So that, to me, is another example of not living up to his rhetoric.
Yeah, I wonder, Ken, if he thinks, I can say this because maybe judged in a vacuum, I don't meet that description, but I'm going to look like a small government guy compared to the people I'll be running against, especially that guy from Illinois that I hope to be running against next fall. I'm going to look like the small government guy next to him.
That could very well be. I've thought that what he was really trying to run on more was the successful economy of Texas over the last, how we've fared compared to other states. I haven't paid as much attention to size of government versus that Texas is one of the best places to be living and working right now. Based on the economic figures.
Is that argument made and closed, and that's a selling point, or is that open to
Well,
dispute?
it is, but it's a very deceptive argument. The problem and the disconnect here is that you will hear this in the next, during the course of the next year, that Texas has created more jobs. Yes, they have created more jobs in terms of numbers than any other state. But the problem is that, as I was explaining to Elaine, that we have been number 1 or number 2 state in having Fortune 500 companies in Texas. But the disconnect is the reality is that Texas is at the bottom of the list for the number of people who have health insurance,
Yes.
number of the people who have auto insurance, number of the people who have even high school diploma. So the disconnect is, where are these jobs? We are creating very low quality jobs that the people can't even afford to have the health
Well,
insurance
that is
auto
being
insurance
analyzed.
or anything else.
That is being analyzed in a lot of the
We are
national
basically
press.
allowing these, Fortune 500 companies to feast on these low employment.
Yeah, and he's not getting a pass on that in the national press.
No,
like Ken
he's
was
not.
just saying, there has been a lot of analysis of his track record on job creation, of his track record.
Even in
education.
conservative publications, they brought this up.
But
I've
the
seen
question
it.
is, does that make a difference in the primary? And I don't,
I
But I'm afraid he's
that's the
gonna win it.
question.
Yeah.
Back on Monday, Politico.com ran this story. Is Rick Perry dumb? I mean, I can't believe that. What a headline. And of course, if you were to read the article, it's very misleading because the article is full of people explaining, no, he's not, hardly. But why are we reading this article or this headline?
Because he's from the South and he
Is
has
that
an
it?
accent. Yes.
And in fact,
Why?
the first thing they say about it is, well, he drops his G's. Does that make you dumb? Or is that just the way you talk? and is
Actually,
that
I
part
think
of the culture?
if you were listening to some of Obama's speeches, he does the same thing when he's trying to be folksy.
Yes. Yeah.
In the
fact,
case
you know he's
case of Rick Perry, I know it's
you know
kind of
he's
a
in trouble when he
dialect of
drops
the
those
state,
G's.
but I hear that all the time. It's not just but it's an automatic thing, I think, by elitist media to think that people from the South are
Right.
stupid or slow or whatever. And then we probably have our share of them, but it's unfair in terms of just being from Texas.
Part of the indictment by Jonathan Martin in this article, he is not an ideas man. Perry hasn't spent his political career marking up the latest Cato or Heritage white papers. In fact, I don't mean to extol ignorance, but it isn't really a virtue for a leader to pore over think tank position papers. In fact, it's more of a virtue if he has an idea or a framework, and then he has advisors to whom he turns to see if he's on the right track, to see if there are facts or statistics that maybe back up what he's planning to do.
And
I don't think
take steps to do it.
Yeah, I don't think we want someone, do we, who pores over Cato or Heritage Foundation papers?
I like a reader. I mean, assuming they can think for themselves, but they like to gather as much information as they can. I mean, one of the things I did always like about Clinton, if it were true, but I think it was, is that he was a voracious reader. And if there was a topic that they were looking into, he would read wide and deep on the subject. So I don't see how that's not a virtue. Assuming that, again, they're thinking for themselves.
I think there might be a difference
So-
between being a voracious reader and marking up positions papers of think tanks.
I'm not sure. So really, this is
like,
an anti-elitist.
like what if you're
argument.
taking more time, mulling over things you could do, and less time, as I think Ken was getting at, doing them? China, he was taken to task in the article because he doesn't have a China policy, and one of his spokespeople said, oh, well, he's reading a book about China right now. I mean, really? He's the
Yeah.
governor of Texas. I don't expect him to have a China policy right now, do you?
No, I don't. I think that seems like an unfair criticism.
Even Democratic state
He
reps
needs to
might
be working on it now if he's running for office, but and starting to formulate that. But his job has been to govern the state of Texas, and even despite the weaknesses people are talking about, the overall impression is that under his watch things have been pretty good in Texas.
Is Rick Perry's
comparatively?
presidential candidate?
Comparatively.
Is his candidacy though sort of? There's an 800-pound elephant in the room. Some people say, and that is that he may be way ahead in these polls because these polls don't include Sarah Palin. But are a lot of these Perry supporters actually people that if she does, and I don't think she will, but if she does jump into the race, would they actually prefer her? Is she who they're waiting for?
I don't think so. I think Perry's rating may go down a few points, but not a whole lot.
Not a lot.
But given the fact that Texas is not any other state by the size of the any other state in the U.S., Texas is a country. It's the 8th or the 10th largest economy in the whole world. He better know how to deal with China, because Texas is like a country, and we have to act like a country because of the size of the economy.
And you have to think that when he was formulating his, his Texas secedes from the nation policy, that he must have been thinking about our. About
I don't know that he. I didn't think he formulated a policy for secession. Didn't he just mention it in passing that we could,
Yes, that's probably
which was a
true.
very
He might have just
calculated
mentioned it.
move.
Yes.
But I didn't. It wasn't like he was drafting up the secession documents, Elaine.
I did think it was nice that we transitioned to Sarah Palin, because that is no doubt part of the reason now that all candidates feel like they better do some homework before they get out in the national media.
Well, yeah, I think that's a good point. But I would say, while I wouldn't want to be as flat-footed as Sarah Palin was on some of these questions, I still think it's sort of absurd in your "is he dumb" discussion to say, well, he doesn't actually have a China policy. It seems a little presumptuous to have a China policy now. I agree that by 2013, he probably
he
needs
must.
to have
And
one.
who are they to?
How do they know if he has?
How do they know what he's not already trying to start putting into place for when he actually gets the nomination?
It might have been
or
a good
gets,
idea.
if he gets a nomination.
You know, I think asking if anybody is dumb is a very sophomoric kind of reporting, I have to say. I like Politico.com, but that's really beneath them. On the other hand, maybe it would be a good idea if we didn't presume brilliance on the part of politicians either. A whole lot of people thought that Barack Obama was possessed of a preternatural brilliance, and he turns out to be really flailing in the presidency. Now, he may not be dumb, but he's no genius, because I think the evidence is in front of us every day.
Right. I mean, I think the way to approach this, right? Because whenever you're talking about this, you're talking about people who are very successful in several realms of their life.
Yes.
To be at the point where they're running for president on
Right.
the national stage. Or a
You can't be
citizen.
dumb to get to that point.
Right. So what we ought to be asking is, well, people think in different ways. People are strategic in different ways. What kind of thinker is he? How does he apply that?
I
How
agree.
does he work with other people?
I
mean,
agree.
that's the way to approach it.
And in the end, we can't really know if someone is dumb any more than we can know if they're a good, Lutheran. I mean, they can tell us, they can give off airs. Presidents are very big these days on releasing their summer reading list, which is, again, it just makes me crazy that anybody would put any stock in that. But for whatever reason, you can pose as an intellectual, and maybe we should be most suspicious of the people that do the most posing.
I have never looked at one of these presidential reading lists. Did they throw in a couple of populist things like M is for murder or whatever?
Yeah, James
Just
Patterson.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
like people don't feel like they're too like,
Yeah.
oh, I could never have a beer with that guy.
Yeah, they always have. There's always like one
They-
mystery on there.
Yeah.
But also,
Yes.
reading lofty material doesn't mean that you absorb it or know anything else.
Didn't we
I've
all
known a
know
lot of
someone-
people who read all kinds of great
Yeah.
classics, and they have
I knew
no
a guy that used
retention.
to always carry around one of those books.
What, like the
very
Brothers
ostentatiously, or Shakespeare or something. And he was a nitwit. I mean, whatever he was doing with that book, it was not getting up here to the cranium.
I admit to people, I really do try to read a classic or a really good biography or a history, and then I alternate it with trash novels. I tell
would
people that
vote
all the
for
time.
Ken.
I'll
would
have
vote
like
for Ken.
I'll have like 4 books on my nightstand. I'm reading something all the time, and it's not always highbrow. That is for sure, for sure.
So Rick Perry's not dumb. We don't think Rick Perry's dumb.
I don't think you can be dumb and have succeeded like he has.
Yeah.
And like I agree with Elaine, there are different ways of thinking and different ways of strategizing, and that's what should be analyzed. And that's ultimately what we have to analyze about him as part of our voting process.
Is anybody surprised by how fast he seems to be running away with this? No?
Not given the field that was in place.
Right. I think he's the most colorful and exciting person at this point because of that field. And let's face it, despite what a lot of elitist media and elitist parts of the country may say about Texas, Texas is exciting. People love people from Texas. I've experienced it my whole life, haven't you?
Well, Colorado and Alaska are a little bit ambivalent sometimes, right? But yes, in general, people love the idea of Texas. There's still that whole mythic thing about it. So
that is larger than life, and he's added personality and color and kind of like this is how I am to the race that some of
And it
the
isn't
more
a-
bland,
there's
the
a
other
long way to
campaigners
go.
were kind of bland
There's a
comparatively.
long way to go.
But you see, he's always going to get more than fair share of criticism, and Rick Perry, and there is always anti-South bias, no matter who the candidate is.
Yeah.
But sometimes he invites this attention. The other day, I heard when he made a remark on Fed chairman that if he was down in Texas,
Right.
we're going to treat him pretty ugly. I mean, what kind of message
Well,
that you are
even
giving?
he knows he made a mistake there,
what,
and his
what kind of
advisors
message that you are
stopped.
giving? Unless you are dumb.